And welcome to the One Online Improvement Committee. And I'm James Barta. But for George, I turn it over to you to get us rolling. I want to also welcome a new member, Vixen Radford. And I'm forgetting your last name. It's not showing at the moment. Oh, Rex, and thank you. And so, yeah, welcome aboard. We're going to be jumping into a whole bunch of stuff. But George, why don't you take us away?
Okay, for introductions, for most of us, you can put it in the chat. What was your favorite activity this summer? I'll just say it, step in the chat real quick. My name is George Adams, chair for this committee. My activity for this summer would be going on the trail and enjoying the fresh air we have so far down here before the smoke decides to come back in. And you can just put the rest in the chat for the rest of you. Overview of previous meeting decisions and action items. Go ahead, James.
Yeah. So last time around, we had our initial rounds of voting, which was, I think we've sort of stumbled upon a system. We can still change it. People voted for their top 5, and then we narrowed it down to 4 different items. And so it sort of tees up our meeting today, where we're going to be looking at a lot of the wording. And I'll talk in more details about the status of some of these options that we've put forward. But I also do want to make a plug that next week we will, in our off week for this meeting, we'll be doing our prep work that George has been ably doing, and Ruth, I think, will be joining us as well. But we'd love to have someone else, especially on the community partner side, if they can join us to help us out as we prepare the agenda for this meeting. So next week at special time, to avoid some conflicts, we'll be meeting Tuesday. So I wanted to talk about some of the things that we did do. That password change, that first item that we talked about, remember, where it was a matter of clarifying the language about resetting the password, making sure it was clear about which special characters you could use. That's actually going into the build tonight. And so you will see that change tomorrow. And so that's sort of exciting. It's happening. And what we were calling option 7, this increase in the amount of time before automatically being signed out. I don't know. I always err on the side of just being transparent about it. We were looking into it, and they're like, "Well, I don't know if federal rules let us." And then we look some more, and it turns out, oh yeah, that has been implemented just a few months ago. So that was sort of weird. That, the left hand didn't quite know what the right hand was doing on that one. So that one is already in place, oddly enough. So how about that? And then this option 9, providing a link to return to providing a link to so you can go back and log in after you've updated your password. That's moving forward. I feel weird talking about it because one of our guests here today, you can see on your on the Zoom call, is Tiffany, and because she knows all about this stuff, but we're gonna let her talk later on. But that has been submitted for the October build, so we'll be moving that forward soon. So I think that runs through a lot of the things we wanted to talk about from last week, well, 2 weeks ago. Does anyone have any questions before we start diving into this new material?
James, I would like to intervene and say,
Please.
Thanks, Vixen, for coming on board. Would like to let the committee members know, all of you do have a voice in this matter, so I would suggest that please tell James, Melissa, and Angie your comments and whatever you think. Please let them know, because your voices do count. Thank you. Go ahead, James.
All right, yeah. So Angel is switching over because, wow, that's an interesting look. It's always something, isn't it? But I guess that it works. It's the briefing sheet. Yeah, Angel?
Yeah, that my settings are kind of on the dark mode. I can try and change it. I just don't know really how. Do you know?
I've never had that setting before. I'm not sure.
I think I might have to go into my settings.
Wow. Okay.
Maybe do one of you want to share it, Melissa or James, or?
Yeah, let me.
I can go ahead, James.
Yeah, I can bring it up. All right. Let me make sure I have the right one before I get going. Yeah. So, I didn't check, but right before this meeting, we got some new wording on one of the options. So I'm going to be showing you a slightly different one than the one that Angel mailed out, and I think the new one got sent out. I hope. So in any case, here is if I can get to it. Okay. So
Can you
yeah, Ruth,
go bigger print?
how's that?
That helps a little. That's better.
All right. Thank you for keep us honest on that. Okay. So one of the big vote getters was, let's make a less threatening sounding immigration related question. Now, I'm gonna go to this other screen, which, let's face it, it's unreadable, but just as a reminder, that, geez, sorry about that. That this is the screen people are seeing. There's a lot in it. I'm sorry we don't have a better screenshot, but the question as it appears right now is, has the person been approved for withholding of removal or deportation being withheld? Which, let's face it, sounds pretty threatening. So I'm going to scroll back. Sorry, I'm moving around so much. And there's a little bit of background information. And so really there's two parts of this. There's one is that we talked about was, let's change the wording. And then the second part, which I'm going to get to in a little bit, is let's have some more information as a pop-up that comes up. And so here's the old wording. And now, to make it a little less threatening, even though sometimes I suppose they're called scare quotes, the idea was to put these things in quotes to make it, make it play out as a legal protection, as a terminology around legal protections, withholding of removal and deportation being withheld. So wordsmithing in a group is never much fun, I know. But are there any comments about this? Any suggestions?
My question is are these words that people filling out the application understand?
as a person who doesn't fill out the fill this out, hold it off, and I'm probably not the qualified person to answer that question, but I will say that when we asked the Oregon Law Center for suggestions, they were pointing out that, and the policy team, is that the thing is, people who are experiencing this immigration status are aware of this terminology, so we did have to keep it in.
Mhm.
Uh,
Okay,
Yeah, that, and sorry, I'll jump in, James. That is their actual status. So if they have that status, they know what this means. If they don't have this status, then they probably have absolutely no clue what it means. So they would just answer the question no.
So yeah, we're sort of in a pickle here, because yeah, people who understand it, you know, who experience it will understand it. People who don't are like, what is this nasty stuff here? Well, hopefully you have this sheet also in front of you, because I'm going to jump to the second part of this question. And past the blurry screenshot. And let's talk about the pop-up that we could have. It's just, I'm a little fuzzy as to whether it's something you click or you hover over, like an information button. But if you want more information, we have the option of putting some more stuff here to explain what's going on. Now, the version you got this morning was, it's technical. There's some information here, but I'm curious. We got this this other version from Samantha. Just around when we sent this briefing sheet off, so I've included it here now. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute and let you guys read them, because I know it's impossible for me, at least, to understand and listen. So just take a moment and take a look at these. Okay, I was looking for visual cues of people getting close to finish reading it. Thank you, Rosetta.
I like text too. Thanks, Vixen.
I mean, there's a certain difficulty in, I think, none of us, well, I certainly have not worked a lot on immigration issues like this, but and there's these legal requirements. So, and Ruth, you asked what language. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
what language will they be reading this in?
Well, we will have to translate this into Spanish. That's a very good point. So it's English or Spanish.
Oh, English or Spanish, so this won't reach all nationalities.
Well, unfortunately, yeah, the one system is only in English and Spanish right now. We are looking at, I think Russian would be the next language. But that's at least a year away.
I have a question.
Please.
This is Judy Richards, and I'm reading this status is granted through an immigration judge. Is there any information here on how do I find out who my immigration judge is? How do I do that? I mean, this is like this, and that's, to me, it's just, yes, it is for me. I understand that it's what it is. But for someone who is thinking about this in a different language, I'm wondering if they know, how do I contact an immigration judge? How do I get one? Where are they? It's just a thought.
That is an excellent thought. Maybe there should be some sort of information of how to reach an immigration judge. You know, as I referenced earlier, we're working a little bit, just some emails with the Oregon Law Center, who does a lot of this immigration work, and that's something we could certainly check with. And I know there's other organizations too that work with this, and love to run that suggestion by him as well.
James,
Yeah,
why don't we just do like maybe in text 2, it seemed kind of cut and dry with everything they're looking for. Just maybe as far as get a hold of immigration judge, why can't say maybe an address or a toll-free number that people can get a hold of underneath this, like in parentheses. That way they,
Yeah, like a legal aid or whatever it is that can
mhm.
move them along.
Yeah, I hesitate. I don't know what our policy is about external numbers within the one application itself, but it's something we'll definitely take a look at.
James, did you see Vixen's comment in the chat? Let me read it.
Yeah, but we don't want so many words as it becomes overwhelming to see or try to understand. If you add that, maybe add a link to more information. Yeah, that is a good comment. You know, keep in mind that this isn't even on the screen. You have to click or hover over the information icon, so this text here will pop up. So hopefully only those who really are curious and want to know more about it will see this text at all. Okay, well, how about this? Given the lull in comments, then is we'll follow up and see about, you know, if there can be some sort of contact information or something added to this information pop-up. But otherwise, we'll go forward with this text. And
Your last statement you made there about context and such, I thought this was supposed to be user-friendly right from the start.
yeah, that's the goal. We have to balance, is it a good contact? I mean, you know, say the phone number changes, it may take us some time to make the change here as well. So that's, we want to balance, you know, helpful information and not overwhelm people as well, or give them wrong contact information.
I also, sorry, James, I
Please.
also don't think that they actually contact the immigration judge. The I-589 is submitted and then it's assigned to an immigration judge. And then once it goes forth in the court system, then it's approved by the immigration judge. So it's not like someone trying to seek out this status would reach out to an immigration judge to get the status. They need to complete that form and submit it.
Well, then that is, this may give a person, send them off on the wrong trail. If we're saying that is the situation, fine, but this status is granted through an immigration judge at the time of blah, 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 blah. That would be better, but you know, what you're saying, Tiffany, is that there's more to this than just, oh, the status is granted through the judge, you know, and that makes perfect sense. But to an immigrant, that to me, as an immigrant, I'd go, oh, who's my immigration judge? How do I get a hold of them? So we need to clarify, okay, this status is granted through the immigration judge who, blah, 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 blah. I don't know what we want to put on the end of that, but can't just leave that the way it is, because I can just see the frustration and the heartache these people would have. And I'm one of those dummies, you know, I would be like, who's my immigration judge? How do I get a hold of him? And then I'd go off on a rabbit trail trying to figure that information out, which is, you know, it's a waste of time.
I think, Judy, I'll say that if a person does, you know, understand what Tiffany is saying, if someone has this form, it's automatically sent to a judge. They
Well,
don't
then
have to do anything.
well, then this status is granted through an immigration judge through your process, through the process that you have completed, something of that sort, so that they know that there's not a last step that they need to take. There isn't somebody that they need to knock on the door and say, you know, are you my immigration judge? Do I have to do something?
So
It's a thought. You talk to the law center about it.
Vanessa, what's your intake? Rosetta? What do you think? Randy, what do you think about this?
I'm kind of new to that realm as well, so I don't know what would necessarily be helpful. It sounds like all of that information would be helpful. Also, keeping an application fairly simple for people helps them to not feel overwhelmed, but also having the pertinent information, you know, is obviously going to be helpful for them as well. I think maybe having a link or two to some resources would be good. I also don't know what legally is appropriate to put all in the application too. Like, I don't know if there's certain stipulations around that personally.
yeah, there's always that balance to strike between helpful information and overwhelming, and every person is going to be different too. So we're trying to make a very blunt tool for what can be considered fine work, delicate work at times. But Judy, I think your suggestion to at least investigate this last phrase is, you know, is worth a little bit of research.
Thank you.
Kenneth, what do you think about this?
I don't have much experience with this sort of thing either, but I do like text-to more. It just seems more simple to read with the bullet points for the other part.
Okay, Mariah, what do you think? Rosetta?
I'm kind of agree with the other lady that I'm not familiar with the whole process of the Form I-589, but I'm guessing that there's instructions with that form that would connect them with the right office.
Okay. Vanessa, what do you think?
Got some quiet people. But it sounds like we're agreed on this this newer text here for the actual part that appears in the question in the application. Thank you, Vanessa.
Okay, so are we gonna vote on this or?
Well, I guess we could vote, or is there any objection to? Okay, sorry, I'm going back and forth here. This text, along with the pop-up that will be this part with some further research on how, if a person actually would need to connect with an immigration judge, if so, is there a resource that would be helpful?
James, I just came up with an idea. Is there a way that, would the committee agree that if, say, like, if we put a link next to where it says judge, immigration judge, and it can take them right directly to the form? What do you all think about that? Or do you think that's too much work?
I think we're going to get too muddled. And if that's what they actually need, we're going to tell them, hey, if this is your status or if this is what you think, I think keeping it simple, because this, if they're coming here, they're not exactly applying for this. This is just a side information. So I think we're over analyzing and going too far. I think it needs to be short and simple, just like this, and leave that personally.
Okay.
Yeah, there's something to be said that this is for further information, not necessarily to, to help put a question in context, but
Okay.
all right. So are we ready to move on to the next option?
Yeah.
Yep, let's go.
Boom, chakalaka. Let's see. Okay, so this one should be a little more straightforward, but anytime we're changing wording, I want to make sure this group, has a chance to weigh in on that wording. And so here the idea is we're stuck with the 90-day password expiration. It's it's the feds, call your congressman, things like that. But here's our background. That's all this is the same as the form that you got emailed this morning. But how to present that information. Now we had two ideas. One was a statement in a visible place. Here's number one. Letting people know that they have to reset their password every night. And the other proposal was a countdown. So people know how long it was before the next update. Well, I have bad news in that Deloitte let us know in no uncertain terms that we can't do a countdown. That would be a much larger request. And so and there could be certain arguments as a problem with the countdown as well. But in any case, it's sort of out of our capability at this time to put a countdown clock. So one idea that Samantha had mocked up was here where you're logging in, there'd be some text, maybe not even this bright or brighter, I don't know, it's up for the committee to say, as you put in your information, something to let you know that passwords are going to expire every 90 days, so you're not surprised when that comes. So question is, what should be the wording? What should it be something like this? Should it be brighter? Should it be less? And keep in mind that people might get sick of seeing it too. So, now we're again expanding amount of information that people are getting. We just have to be careful about that, because then we make the whole form cluttered too. So lots of different things, and that's why you're here, to make the tough calls.
So I think having it down there is great. Or the only other thing I would say, like you said, if it's annoying, maybe having the option like click here to not display this message anymore, like those pop-ups, like please don't remind me again, you can do that, or just leave it down there. Because I think just keeping it short and simple, like every time I log in, like, oh yeah, it expires every 90 days. I know in the back of my head, like, okay, has it been 90 days? But, or you can do a pop-up, like click, I know I'm gonna have to renew in 90 days, and then let it be. And when it pops up, you're like, oh yeah.
I echo that. That sounds good. I think it being, if it has to stay there and there isn't the option of saying, don't show me anymore, it will just make sure that people do actually see it and remind them of it as well.
I like the idea of it being there permanently too, because it's something that everybody needs to be reminded that it's going to expire.
What about you, Tiffany? What do you think?
Who did you call
Me
in
as
first?
in me?
Yes.
Oh.
Tiffin, T-I.
Tiffany.
I'm good with it. I like it being there. Everybody's seeing it every day,
Yeah.
every time.
Okay, Rosetta, what do you think?
I like it as is. Like what's on the screen.
Okay, Kenneth, what about you?
Yeah, I think it looks good.
Okay, Mariah, what about you?
I like it as well.
And Judith,
Thumbs up.
who are we missing here?
You.
Okay. I agree with you.
So, okay, do we like the wording? Do we, well, I shouldn't interject things. So what do you think of the wording? What do you think of the font size, things like that?
I don't
Font,
think,
yeah, font size. The only part that you can't read is I'm not a robot, but the rest of which is, yeah, tiny blurry. Ruth, is it big enough, or can you enlarge it on a screen?
Oh, this comes up on a screen. It could be enlarged.
Okay, then that's good.
Yeah.
That works. That works.
Okay, we'll have to make a new mock-up and get this to you as well. But because I think Samantha just threw this together pretty quickly. But it'll be very similar to this. I was just thinking, well, this really pops compared to like username or email address or password here. And so I could imagine being a little smaller in this.
So if you're doing username and you put that in there, and then you put your password in, and the password's wrong, then it's going to pop up password wrong. Do you want to reestablish a password, right? We'll do that.
I don't know. I mean, what we're doing here is not going to affect how the regular password is done now.
But what Judy's asking is if the password is no longer good and it says you have to change it, how's it going to tell you?
However it's done now, I think it says this password is expired, you need to redo it. And follow these instructions for resetting your password.
Are we gonna get to that eventually? Because that is a big part of frustration for our community, is reestablishing a new password. So I'm assuming that, James, that you're gonna be gradually getting to that. Maybe not today, but hopefully you will be getting to it.
When you say get to it, I'm not sure what you mean.
We want to see it. We want to talk about it. We want to see what's going to be happening when a person does their password. Oh, my password's not working. That's like and it comes up and it says your password is not working. So you need to reestablish a password. So we'd like to see that process, because that is one of the most frustrating processes that our people go through.
That sounds like something we can do in a future meeting where we walk through that process, because
Okay.
I can't speak to it at
You
this
can leave
point.
me at home anytime. I know, I always. Yeah, well, that's good. We'll make a note of that. Right, George?
Well, because so many times to change a password, you've got to have a separate email, or you got to have a phone that you can use to do it. And if these people may not all have the fancy equipment that we have.
Yeah,
They're on a phone.
I'm looking to our medical assisters here too. Mariah, Rosetta, I'm curious. Well, I'm sure Brandy, you've run into this too. Has this been a regular problem, the whole new password thing, or is that just something you don't have to deal with?
Mariah's shaking her head. Come on.
No, I just think that when you don't, you just click the forgot password link, and it's just kind of like every other process that we have these days with anything else. You're going to hit forget password, and I'll send you a reset link to your email, and then you'll kind of go from there.
And how old are you, Mariah?
I just think that's the name of the game these days on so many platforms, not just this one. And I think it's convenient that when you do forget it, you can just simply get it sent real quick to your email and then rechange it from there. So it's kind of maybe not an issue that I see as, that's just kind of my take on it, I guess.
Sounds like we got a generation gap here.
We do
Yes.
a huge
Yes.
generation gap, and that's the whole point of it, because our people have the same gaps, and they also may have other issues, and their disability may interfere with the thinking process of everything. And it's for Ruth and I, we understand it because we're in the community. We understand how this is like the number one thing that we hear about is changing the password number, and you do it wrong 3 times and they shut you down, and then you can't do anything. So yeah, I think maybe at a later date you need to bring somebody in to talk to us about that.
Well, as Melissa mentioned in the notes or in the chat, we are captured this request and we will be working on it. Yeah, this one's going to be a pickle because it is what it is. This is our modern society, and gosh darn it, this is one of these things that we need to figure out how to simplify it as much as possible. It's just there's that barrier of how much is possible.
Oh, Judith, we love you being here.
You got that. I'm a bad girl.
You're
You put
speaking
Ruth
for a
and I
lot of people.
together and you're really in trouble.
I will share in the frustration that I have 2 separate notes tabs on my phone, and every single website I have to write down the password. It's frustrating these
And
days.
how many do you have grandparents and parents that are like, Mariah, would you come over here and help me with this? I'm all messed up. Yeah. That's where we come from. And we just, compassionately feel for the people who don't have
I've
Mariah's in
been
there.
I've been the keeper of my grandma's email and
Yep,
password on my
that's
notes
right.
tab. Yes.
Not everybody has Mariah's, so we have to make this as simple as we possibly can. And I appreciate everybody's putting up with me. And so at a later date, maybe we could have somebody come in and we can go over it again. Okay, I dropped the subject at this time so we can move on to other things.
Judy, I love it. I appreciate your comments because I know you're speaking for lots of people out there. So I think it's important for us
Thank
to
you.
hear that.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I think we are set with our option discussions. We've got some homework to do and to get things to you. But the next thing we were going to do is talk about how these things happen. But we're really, as the slide says, I think we're ready for a break then. And so why don't we take that break for 5 minutes? So according to my watch, we're at 2:48. So let's plan on 2:53, I don't know, probably 2:54, and we'll be back. Okay.
Good, I can go feed my dogs.
Perfect.
Hey, James,
Yes, George.
I did notice, and we did skip one item. And that's beginning the draft charter present meeting on 13th. That's today.
Yes, we did, and we didn't talk about it.
We could probably go over that really quick after the break.
Well, I'm not even sure if I would suggest, George, maybe we talk about that next week in our prep meeting to see where we're at, because I haven't even looked at it in a couple of weeks, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
But I do know that with us getting deeper into our committee going and working on it for it to be in a year or whatever, we need to. So.
And thanks for, I hope, a good break. But yeah, we haven't really given our new guest, Tiffany, an introduction, but I just want to welcome Tiffany Linford, who is in so many ways the traffic cop and the brains of a lot of, well, of the work items that we put in, that we prioritize and suggest. She's the one who puts it together. It's a regular scrum of competing interests that try to get their items in. But as I said in the first meeting, you know, we have, by contract with Deloitte, we have a limited number of work items that we can put into the queue and make changes. And so I'm happy to have Tiffany here with us to talk about this process, and also share the graphic that Melissa's helped put together to help explain it all. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
All right. Thank you, James. So, like James said, I'm Tiffany Linford. I am a business analyst for Organ Eligibility Partnership, which is right there, one Organ Eligibility Partnership. And my main role is work items. So when you guys meet and talk about things that you want improved, and then James and his team sends them on to me, and I officially log them as a work item. I create the document, identify who needs to look at it, and work with our vendor Deloitte on finalizing it and getting it squared away. So right there, that first line, journey starts when you guys submit an idea. And then you guys talk about it and vote and prioritize which ones are which. And then they come to me. So some items can be identified, and I think Sam probably helps a lot with this. There are probably some ideas that can be determined right away to be large change requests or smaller work items. And that's what that second piece. So then, you know, you guys review, discuss, prioritize. And then that's when they get sent to me. The work item side. So I am the work item side. Now, when you guys make a decision and it appears that the item you're putting forward is small enough to be a work item, sometimes, which you've already seen with James talking about, for example, one of the recommendations you guys put forward about the countdown. So what happens, a work item is logged and Deloitte does a review of the work item and determines whether it actually meets work item criteria or not. So even though we think and feel that it is a small item, once Deloitte gets a hold of it, who's our vendor, they actually have the final decision on whether it actually meets work item criteria or not. So if it meets work item criteria, yay, we push it forward through so many groups. But there are a bunch of people that look at it, confirm that it meets all of our legal requirements, all of our federal requirements. It meets everything. If at any point in time there is a change made that changes what you guys asked for, it will get kicked back to you for you guys to sign off on you're okay with this change. We would not make a change to your work item without you guys being notified of said change. I just want to toss that out there. So it does go through several reviews and then it's implemented and it pops up in the system and you guys get to see what you've done. I will say it is a long process for work items. Sometimes they can be really quick and fast, but a lot of times it's not quick. Like right now, you guys are working on work items that are for October, which is just next month. But I have groups that we are working on items for April of 2024. Sometimes they can take a really long time and sometimes they're really, really quick. There's a lot of people involved, a lot of state folks, a lot of our vendor folks that have to look at everything, review it, make sure that it's good to go. And then once it's good to go, we have a whole testing team that tests it to make sure it's going to work correctly. So there's a lot of people involved in this process. And it's really cool that you guys get to put forth a recommendation, get it approved, get it into the system, and then actually see it. A lot of times we don't actually get to see our work that we do. We do a lot of stuff that's behind the scenes that can't be seen. So I think it's really cool that you guys get to implement something and then actually see it once it gets deployed and is live. So that's the process. Change requests, I can speak on those a little bit. Change requests are obviously bigger than a work item. And sometimes they're not huge. They can be just above what's required for a work item. And those go pretty much the exact same route as a work item, except they're much longer. I know change requests right now are out at least a year, and they have to be prioritized by a special group. They have what we call JAD sessions, joint application design, where we bring people in to talk about it, discuss it, finalize design, and then it's implemented. And right now, like I said, those are a year out. So we are right now in meetings for change requests that are going to go into the one system a year from now. So they take a lot more time than a work item does. But yeah, that's all I got. Anybody got any questions?
Yeah, Tiffany, once we get all this down on these options, there's gonna be more work coming our way for 2024, yes.
Yeah. Are you asking me if you're gonna have more work?
Yeah, yeah, after we get done, after we already got done, if we get done with all these options and stuff, that's needed. Is there gonna be the 2024 stuff coming to us soon for us to decide on?
I'll jump in and say that, the work that this committee has, comes in from your suggestions, from the form that we're going to be talking about next, from people around Oregon. It's what this committee hears from users. Now, a lot of the things that is change requests and that other teams are bringing forward. Yeah, anytime there's a change in policy, if Congress or the state changes things, then that creates demand from both work items, but mainly change requests. And that's why we're, a year out as it is. There's basic health plan that is expanding eligibility, the income limit for eligibility for OHP. That's a big change request. There's the expanded eligibility for ERDC. Those things have to go through change requests. But yeah, that's one thing I spent some time doing since I used to be an advocate, was to let the advocates know, hey, there's a backlog of stuff right now. Don't get too excited about making a bunch of changes, because we've got a lot to work through right now.
So to clarify, a change request is like something bigger, like eligibility wise, where work request is something smaller, because I know it's also, I have a question, how do we see what's there? Because sometimes it's do we have to, for instance, today we were working on eligibility on services with clients, and there was an issue where we've noticed a lot where sometimes they need certain type of verification documents and they submit it, but a case manager is given, so many days for them to open it, but that doesn't coincide with how long they have to pen to work it. So sometimes they've turned in documents in time, but it's really closer to the tail end. So they'll automatically get denied because they got timed out. So, and then it'll generate it. So is that something that can be every time something's submitted, it automatically refreshes and extends the time that something can be processed? Because that feels like it's something where then the worker has to go back and say, they have to open it and say, okay, they're not really denied. They're so backlogged, they didn't get to process that document. So is that a work request, or is that a change request?
So I can speak on that. So work items are, and this may be way above everybody's head, and if it is, please let me know. But work items are 50 hours of work or less. So Deloitte determines how many hours it's going to take to do that work. And if it's less than 50 hours, it's a work item. If it's more than 50 hours, it's a change request. So for the Deloitte, the vendor side, it's that simple. But there is a lot that goes into that calculation. Now, Vanessa, speaking directly to yours, first of all, that is really weird that it would deny.
It's weird, but I can show you, I get 7 of those a week. And we just saw today, someone lost SNAP and they lost ERDC, and they just spoke to a caseworker yesterday because they turned in a document 2 weeks prior, but the caseworker has so many days to access it, but it got timed out, your renewal was to this day. So they lost their SNAP as of today.
Yeah, so the more you get to know me, the more you learn that I just say things the way they are. So I was part of one when we first originally designed the system. And one of the things that we wanted to do was, so on the medical side, we have the ability that when a client submits a document, for example, they're pended for something and they submit it. On the medical side, we say, oh, you've done something. We are not going to close or deny your benefits until a worker actually touches that, because obviously the client has done what they need to do. We tried really, really hard to get SNAP and TANF and ERDC to also follow that process. And with SNAP, it's really difficult because they're a whole nother federal group, and FNS has so many requirements that are just crazy and will blow your mind.
FNS is the federal oversight for SNAP.
Yes, Food and Nutrition Services. So they said no. Even if you're in a backlog and you know you're in a backlog and you know you're not going to get to it on time, I'm sorry, but you can't keep a client's benefits open past that time frame. So until we get to a place where we're ahead of the game, or at least within those time frames, we're unfortunately going to see this unless we can convince the Federal Nutrition Services to change some of their policies.
What about ERDC? Because like we just see, like we noticed that, and then it's hard because we have now relationships within ODHS people, and we realize like, and we have to call them and say, you're going to get a denial letter, but you're technically not denied. It's just the caseworkers are so backlogged. And then we have to connect with our other partner agencies that are paying for that, for extra services, saying, hey, it's going to look denied, but it's not denied because they turned it in on time. It's just hard, like either flagging it, or instead of it saying denied, or something else like timed out instead of denied, straight denied. Because when they see that word, they see, you know, that it's now inactive. Sorry, baby. And we've had that where it's like, we know you're technically not denied because you turned it in, but that's also hard. And we're just changing verbiage from denied or to just timed out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's definitely something that maybe Sam could bring forward and talk to, because it would just be, you know, a change on the applicant portal side, and it may just meet work item criteria. If it's a change request, then it can go the other route. But definitely anything that will make your lives easier or clients' lives easier in applicant portal should definitely be brought forward. And I mean, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I think that would, because overall, like you'll have a client that we know, we see the case, and we're very lucky because we're a very small subgroup that isn't ODHS that has access to one because of how wiggly our work is, where sometimes all you need is a screenshot to show, look, I'm not denied, I'm timed out, I see it went past my expiration. Because sometimes one caseworker will tell you, you're fine, don't worry about it, we're going to review it. And then you call back and another caseworker says, I see denied, you have to reapply.
I know. That's like a humongous training piece for our staff.
And that's fine, but that's why just changing it to like timed out versus denied, I feel would be so much beneficial for everyone. It just not to read denied because they got timed out.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
I'd have to agree with Vanessa on this because there's been a lot of people, I'm sure, has had this problem.
But what do you do when you get a denial saying you're denied in one envelope and get another envelope in the same mailbox that says that your food stamps have been extended?
Oh
That's
yeah.
where sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say notices are like a whole nother issue. Because we do. There are times where workers are taking action. So here, I guess here's a good example. So I work the document, or no, let me go back. So this morning, the system automatically ran and said, oh, you're past your time frame. I'm so sorry, you're denied. And tonight, that letter goes out. Boop. That's the denial letter coming to you saying that you're denied. And then tomorrow morning, I, as a worker, I come in and I'm like, oh, hey, here's this document. I see that they responded timely. Let me go ahead and restore the case and approve it. And then it just so happened that USPS is on top of it that day, and both of those letters come to you the exact same day. So you were denied for like less than 24 hours, and then you got reapproved. And it's extremely unfortunate. If we can catch it in the same day, so like if the case would have been denied and restored in the same day, you would have only gotten the one notice, the restore, essentially extension saying that you're reapproved notice. But that doesn't happen very often.
And that's where I say, then we have the families call out and they're crying like, we lost everything. So then we look in and we say, don't panic. It was established, give it some time. And luckily, but we have a very small amount of groups that we can do this too. And then I'm like, I can print out your new notice if once, because sometimes we also see they're approved, but a letter hasn't been generated yet.
Yeah.
Sometimes we see a caseworker type something and they say, oops, I made a mistake, and it auto generates it. And then they say, you're going to see a denial, and then you're going to see an approval. But that's why, like, sometimes just changing the verbiage so it's like pending still or timed out, because so many people rely on those. Those are like their golden tickets for additional services outside.
Yeah. Yeah. That is all very, very good.
So I want to transition to our next item, but this discussion is sort of like our next item anyway. But before I do that, any other questions for Tiffany on this process? Great. Well, see, Tiffany, your powers of explanation are mighty indeed. But or it's still, you know, still mixing in everyone's minds too. Maybe it's a combination of both, I think. But the next thing was the form to talk about how to make improvements. So Vanessa, we're not done with you yet. You know, one of the one of the things is, you know, how do you take an idea like that and describe it so we can then put it on our list and it'll be considered by the group. And as Melissa is showing us, I think it's Melissa, I'm not even sure who's showing right now, but in any case, you know, this is the form we're thinking of using. And so we also want to ask you guys, is this a good way to do it? Should we have more questions? Should there be fewer? Should, you know,
I love this,
Okay.
but can we add because I mean, generational gap, but the ability, it's not requirement to drop in a photo, like a screenshot. Like I can explain it, but sometimes things come out of my mouth and I know to me they make sense, but to no one else they make sense. I'll reread an email 17 times and same thing. I'm like, someone will call me like, Vanessa, what the heck were you trying to explain? So if I could do a screen grab and like, you know, hey, in this area where it says this, can we put this? I think that would make it easier for everyone. And then they can drop in their suggestions. It's not a requirement, but like, do you want to drop in a photo, or, you know, someone could take a screenshot from their, you know, yeah.
well, the word that pops in my head is brilliant. Yeah, I love it. I want to make sure that this form can do that though, but we will definitely look into that. I love that idea.
I like it. Judith, Ruth, what do you think?
I think it's a good idea. I mean, it's an option. A person doesn't have to do it if they don't want to, but if they want to, that's great. Yeah, I think all options are good.
I agree with the option that, you know, you have a choice of whether you fill it out or not.
What about you, Brandy?
Sorry, I kind of had someone in crisis for a minute, so I tuned out. Sorry about that. You can ask me the question again, though, unless there was just too much to absorb. You can skip me.
What do you think about the form setup? Do you like it the way it is? Do you want to change a little bit? Is there anything you want to add?
I think it looks pretty straightforward.
I guess my biggest concern is that you're putting a lot of shaded lettering. And shaded lettering is difficult for people who have low vision. So you might want to see if there's a way to limit how much you do that.
That makes sense. That's understandable.
So the bold, what we consider bold is shaded. Is that what you're saying, Ruth?
Oh, I'm talking about the opening statement under the heading.
Suggested improvement. Next one is how the change will improve.
No, up above.
Oh,
The white lettering.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes that can be challenging for people, I think, the white on something darker.
Yeah, that's what we call shaded lettering.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. Would it help if it was larger or just change the colors altogether?
Well, it needs more space because it makes the white blur. Maybe the lettering needs to be wider. Maybe not bigger, but more space in the lettering.
So Melissa has this form, but I think her audio is giving her trouble, but she'll take a look and see if either A, we can change the background, or B, just make the font bigger so it's a little more clear. No, that's an excellent point though. Thank you, Ruth.
What about you, Kenneth? What do you think?
Yeah, I will agree with most of the comments so far. It looks fine so far to me. Pretty straightforward and simple.
Okay, what about you, Mariah?
I like all of the suggestions, the option, everything to drop in photos. I also agree with them that it's hard to see and read. But yeah.
Rosetta, what do you think?
I like the suggestions that I've heard.
Okay, and Vixen? Or no, Tiffany? No,
I
actually,
like it all.
Can I make one more suggestion?
go
So
for it.
this isn't on the form, it's when you submit it. I love that visual you did, like, you know, here's a copy of your response, and then this is the process it follows. So you might not see it overnight, you might not hear from us, but this is what we're doing with this. Because I know that's one thing with a lot of people when they do surveys, they want to know, what are you doing with my information? What's happening to this information? So just that beautiful visual you had would be a great, like, thank you for this. This is what we're like, and it's just an email response. Like if you click on send me a copy of my responses, that comes with that.
Nice. I think so too.
That is an excellent point as well.
Mhm.
Okay, there you go, James.
Thank you, George. Well, and thank you to Melissa, who, like I said, it's microphone issues, but but she gets to do all this, so I'm grateful.
Vanessa, did we get to you or?
To me, I think you got to me too many times. Sorry, guys.
Oh, that's because we like you.
All right, well, look at us. We're here we are wrapping up, and I think we do have, when I say we, the state staff, we've got to get back to you about the final mock-ups for the wording on these options. And I skipped something there, but I'm going to come back to it. The wording for the options, get these screenshots. But as we think about our next meeting in 2 weeks, we have another set of, well, we're not calling them options anymore. We're going to be calling them requests. And so if you click on the link in the agenda, but I'm going to just drop it in as well into the chat. So we want you to vote for your top 5 again.
Oh.
And and you can start thinking about it right now. We have a couple minutes, but and we changed the numbering, got changed around a little bit, but now that we have our back-end spreadsheet all set up, we're going to keep these numbers, so we're not going to be dancing around. I know the numbers got changed a little bit, so you'll notice a lot of familiar things on this list, but note the last 4 are new from people who've submitted items in the using the form, or maybe discussion in this meeting or whatever. So Obviously, you don't have to fill it out right now, but take a look. And we do want you to get in a response by Friday. So that way you won't completely forget about our wonderful time together this afternoon. But and if you have questions, feel free to email any of us. And take your top 5, and then at the next meeting we'll finalize suggestions that I then will get to Tiffany, so she can put them on the list and we can start doing the work. Next time around, Samantha will be back from her Florida conference, and we'll get to talk about these in more detail.
James,
Yes.
are these the remaining? These are the last remaining options, right?
Well, this is what we have for right now, like Vanessa's idea that she was just talking about. That's not on the list right now. We can, I'm not sure if we can add it just yet, or we'll figure out something, but there's always going to be some other ideas. I still sort of wonder, in the back of my mind, are there any of these ideas that you just don't want to consider anymore? They're just not worth our time, or you don't think it's a big deal. We have to figure out a way to capture that. Maybe there's none, but I just wanted to throw that idea out. But these are the suggestions we have, and we welcome more.
Have a question.
Please.
You can't leave without that last question from Richards. Number 1, I didn't know that. I didn't know that adding the child to their case would remove a child from another case.
Well, it's the same child.
Yes, I understand that, but I thought it was a bigger process than that.
I think, boy, I'm going to talk, and I'm not an expert on this, but my understanding, and maybe Tiffany might know this more, but this, what'll happen is maybe a child applies for themselves, or there's a different parent who says, oh, I'm going to have the child on this case. And then the child who, was on someone else's case is suddenly pulled off. And that other guardian or whoever is just like, hey, what happened to my benefits? And so, so that's an issue. And
it does require worker action. So it's not just automatically done. For medical, for Magi medical, it can automatically be done. But it doesn't it's kind of hard. It's kind of weird. It doesn't.
That was exactly what I was asking, Tiffany, because that is precisely, and you answered it, and that's it. That's all I needed to know. Got it. Okay.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Okay.
So now these are going to come up on our email, and we're going to do these by Friday.
Yeah. Well, in fact, yeah, you should have the link now, and the link is in the agenda. If we need to resend it, we certainly can.
Okay.
We'll put it with the notes. I'm just looking at the comment Vixen put in. That's, if worry about archiving the messages. So that's definitely a consideration, because I think what we'd heard of it felt like there was just so many letters and it was cluttering up the letter, their inbox. But there may be a price for that too.
Okay.
I was gonna say, definitely, like for me, when somebody, I haven't talked to them for a while, but then they come in and they're like, well, I don't know what's going on, and I have to go back through. But if they've got in and they've archived, then I would lose that ability to see what all of that conversation has been. That would put me at a hindrance, and especially if I were to have to call the customer service line at a 2-hour hold to find out what's going on, like that as a worker just panics me. And I get it. I get that there's a lot of pages, but it also gives me like a reference of what has happened or what their income was, because our screens do look different than the worker portal. And so I can go back through there and maybe find what their income was stated, 3 years ago, and that was the last time it had been updated. Because I can't necessarily see exactly what things look like that the workers see.
Presumably
Mike,
there'll be,
thank you for explaining that, because
Oh.
that is good clarification.
Well, my question is why? Why is there this kind of a hole in the system?
well, it sounds like we have plenty to discuss. I hope you click on the link so you can look at these for yourself. And I don't know, I guess we are sort of at time though at this point. But I'm still trying to figure out, Ruth, your last question, when you said why is there a hole in the system? It's an archive, and so you could just presumably click on some other button to bring up those old archived letters, though.
Well, to me, I think a file should be kept up to date. And I can understand if the worker doesn't go and look in the file, then they wouldn't know. But if the file's kept up to date, the worker should know what's going on.
I think this is a different, I think this was from when, so for instance, I asked a parent, do you have your ERDC determination letter? And she said, I have to go look for it in my messages. And it was like, time for you to renew. You turned in a document. You got your food stamps. Oh, food stamps was reduced. Oh, please turn this in for food stamps. So she had a ton of notices that weren't relevant. And she's like, I don't need the message that it's time for me to turn in, or we turned in that document. Like, that's like, I'm going to archive that. So like, if you don't need to archive it or separating, like, I want to just look at notices or determination letters. I just want to look at this, because that's what that was. Is sometimes the family had to go back and back and back, especially if they're receiving multiple benefits. Like, it's time for this, it's time for that, that it was almost like junk mail and hard for someone to go through to find exactly what they were, looking for. So this shouldn't affect case notes at all. Like, it doesn't affect anything with what a caseworker put in, what they submitted for income. It's literally just the letters, the messages that they're getting auto-generated from one.
Well, hopefully that helped, Ruth. But like I said a couple minutes ago, we're sort of at time, so we will continue this discussion some more. I really appreciate everyone's questions and comments, and look for your emails. And again, don't be afraid to send your questions in.
Before we close, James,
Please.
anybody on this committee? The department is still looking for another co-chair. Is there anybody interested in being another co-chair? You could probably think about it, and we could come up with it in the next meeting.
We'd love to have you.
And our meetings that James and I have, and Melissa and Samantha and stuff, it's really interesting. And it's really fun. So.
Brandy, that's a nice smile.
Yeah, George, you look like you're having a lot of fun.
All right, well, consider it. Thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording, and I really appreciate your input today.
Mhm.